Reginald Ringgold. He is the founder of California-based Rose Gold Investments. Ringgold is a hedge fund manager, a private equity investor, venture capitalist, motivational speaker, and best-selling author. He launched his career in finance in 2002 as a senior account executive with Ameriquest Mortgage, where he negotiated, packaged, and sold over $25 million worth of A, and subprime mortgages for both residential and commercial clients. In 2007, Mr. Ringgold went on to serve as the chief investment officer for Epic Center Investment Group, a global macro hedge fund based in Northern California. In 2012, he created Rose Gold Investments, a financial conglomerate registered with the CFTC and the NFA as a commodities pool operator. He is responsible for investment banking, advisory, and operational matters. So we want to welcome Mr. Ringgold. Thank you for being our guest. And
thank you for having me, Crystal. It is a pleasure and a blessing to be here. You know, God has been good to me, and I have been, on a mission trying to spread this word, of financial literacy to the world, especially our community.
And how important is that?
I mean, it's everything. I mean, if you don't have, money, you can't pay for your food, clothing, the necessities in life, So, and right now, people are trying to survive, and I'm looking to help my community thrive rather than survive.
That's a fantastic goal. So tell me, how did you get involved or get here? I mean, there are many of us talk about this, but there are many that talk, but not many that do.
Right.
So tell me, how did you become an investment banker, and what was the motivation for you getting into this space?
Well, I'm 5'7", about 130 pounds, soaking wet, and I had dreams and aspirations of making it like most young men, of becoming an athlete. I wanted to become a basketball player.
Okay.
I was working diligently. I remember playing in the backyard for hours and hours on end, and I went to the 11th grade, and I was still on the freshman team at the time. My mother, she had a long talk with me, and this was a talk that went on for a couple months, where she was just trying to instill in me that, hey, it's nice to be dedicated and to persevere to do something, but if it's not realistic, you might want to have your options open.
Okay.
So I looked at her like a naysayer, but it wasn't until she told me about some of the hedge fund managers like David Tepper. And, these investment bankers and hedge fund managers, they're the ones who cut the checks, to the athletes.
Right.
So she said that, this hedge fund manager, Paul Tudor Jones, David Tepper at the time, she said that these guys, they made what all athletes combined made in 1 year, one person.
Okay.
So she said Michael Jordan, he makes money, Magic Johnson makes money, but somebody has to cut the check. So, I'm pondering. Now, here's where it got interesting. She said, look, if you own the team, son, no one can tell you can't play.
There you go.
Okay. So then I shifted my focus to that. And then, obviously this is something I can do in my sleep. It doesn't matter if I'm 80, 90 years old. You never can get too old to invest.
Right.
So that's
exactly.
Kind of
and, but it's interesting your mother did that, because most of us don't have those backgrounds where we can get exposed to this playing field, because this is really how you create wealth, right? It's not working a job.
But you got to understand, the paradigm shifted. A lot of people didn't have the internet, before.
Right.
They didn't have access. Trading and investing has shifted to, now we have an electronic medium where we're not trading on the floor in the trading pits anymore. So with that being said, when I came up in school, we had computer classes. Mm-hmm. We also had, AOL. The internet was becoming very prevalent.
Right.
So I was able to get in and learn how to do it on the computer, and pretty much I stuck to it until, it started to work. Not to mention, obviously, we don't come from a background where we can go to the best schools and have all the resources. So I just figured, as long as I persevere, This is something that there's no time limit. The market doesn't care how much you have or what background you come from.
Right.
Everybody has an even playing field, so to speak.
Right, exactly. I know in 2008 at the recession, and I have many friends that still are in corporate America, and they had their 401ks, but they really didn't know how they operated. So a lot of them lost their money because they kind of allowed their jobs or their organizations, the companies that they work for, to make those decisions for them. What were your comments on?
Well, this is really what got Rose Gold Investments started. My grandmother, she would have this shoebox with her statements. And, I asked her one day, I'm like, why don't you open your statement? She said, even if I open them, honey child, I wouldn't understand it. Right? I don't know what I'm looking at.
Right.
So, obviously I would get in and, break the things down. And even whether she would make money or not, the advisor was making money. I went in, I probably did that for a couple of years myself, and after the third year, you got to realize if, you're making money regardless whether I make money, there's got to be something wrong with that. And that's how the whole financial advisory industry works.
Okay. They're making money. And I know even during the election, they had the ticker tape, the Dow Jones going on, and it was like dropping, like the bottom was dropping out of it.
We made good money that week. I was actually in Indonesia that week when I had found out what happened. I was looking at apartments in Malaysia. I was thinking about not coming back. But, we did pretty good that week, mainly because we were playing on the fear, the investor sentiment. Everybody was fearful in terms of what was going on. So the news, they're fearmongers. They will pitch that, okay, the market's collapsing, it's crashing, get out, sell. But in all actuality, it's like a garage sale. It's bargain shopping. It immediately, rose by about 1,000, points in a matter of, I think it was 2-3 days. It dropped and then turned right back around. So, what the banks do is they push fear, causing you to sell something at a very cheap price so that they can buy it cheap and then sell it high.
I know your interest is to help us create wealth in our communities. What some of the strategies or how do we do that? How do we go about changing where we are, our paradigm now as we operate to be able to create that wealth in our communities?
Right. Well, the first things first, we have to make better use of our physical and intellectual capital.
Okay.
That means investing our time and money rather than spending it, right? A lot of people, they say, I spend my time, I spend my money. When we invest our time and we invest our money, it gives us a return on our investment, right? We get fruits from our labor. So when families possess assets, such as valuable skills, social networks, a home, some savings, even an ownership stake in a business, diversified portfolio, you enjoy greater resilience. And you're better able to withstand occasional shocks like unemployment or illness, right? So you can then plan for the future better, send your child to college or have a secure retirement. Jobs, they start and stop. Right? Just as fast as a job can come, you can lose it. I remember my aunt, I would ask her, well, why don't you get a job? She says, well, if I go get a job, I'll lose my Section 8. I lose my welfare. I get unemployed at 6 months later, it's gone.
Right.
So it's assets of various kinds that yield greater stability and security. So it's not only true for families, but also, communities. So even though jobs, they can be drawn into a community, they can leave that fast without warning.
Right, exactly.
So if attracting jobs means degrading a community's assets through pollution, low-wage jobs, or even a loss of tax income through excessive tax breaks. What can seem like a gain can really represent a net loss.
Right, exactly.
So if traditional economic development, if it tends to be about attracting industry into a community, then building wealth instead is about using underutilized local assets to make the community more vibrant. So it would be about developing assets in such a way that the wealth stays local, right?
Okay.
Right. So the aim is to help families and communities control their own economic destiny. A lot of times the money, it comes in the community and it leaves just as fast as it comes in the community.
It does.
The Jewish community, they'll circulate their dollars many times over before it leaves, and that strengthens the community. So this is about community wealth building, a fast-growing economic development movement that strengthens our community. And how do we do that? Well, through broader economic ownership, control of businesses, therefore giving us control of the jobs, It builds on local talents, capacities, institutions, rebuilding capital to strengthen the cause, and obviously, when we own businesses and these businesses are anchored in place and aren't moving, this is how we strengthen, the community.
Okay. And so we know in our community, financial literacy is an issue. I think at the core of all of our issues, I know we focus on helping businesses get certified so that they can then do business to business,
Right.
B2B,
Right.
And then subcontract and become prime. Well, what we found in our search for those that are ready, that can do that, or a lot of them don't even know that they can do that, they're not prepared from a financial structure.
Right.
They don't understand anything about financial statements. Right. They don't understand about balance sheets and profit and loss. They're not even quite sure how the whole investment world, and they're fearful of that. So how do we create that? How do we? What are the steps that we need to do in order to even get to what we talk about creating wealth?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you don't understand something, right, as far as an investment's concerned, then you shouldn't even be investing in it. Right. Obviously, there are so many different things that one can invest in that you can get lost. Right. As the youth would call it, lost in the sauce. But how do we become wealthy, so to speak, or more self-sufficient? Well, we invest in self, right? So that means educating yourself. Right. Right. Saving money. Right. When you educate yourself, obviously you are now able to take the knowledge, take the resources, and invest them in things that generate passive residual income. Exactly. Right? I call it paying for a paycheck, paying yourself. Okay. Right? Exactly. My mother was a firm believer that if I was going to buy Jordan shoes, I had to own shares of Nike first. Right. If I wanted to go in and I wanted to buy, some CD player, I had to have some shares in Sony first. Okay. Right. So obviously, we don't understand multiple streams of income. Right now, we invest time for money. And time is the most valuable commodity we have. Right. You can't make more time. You can't work harder to create more time. You can't get time back. Nope. Money, you can. Yeah. Right? You can always make more money. So with that being said, we need to allow our money to work for us. There was an analogy. Kevin O'Leary, who's on the Shark Tank, he's one of my I guess I would say heroes in finance that I like to look after. But he gives an analogy where he says that your dollars are kind of like soldiers at war, right? Okay. When we send our soldiers out, we only want them to be fighting battles that we know they can win, right? Exactly. And we want them to come back with prisoners. Right. Now, a lot of times with people, we spend money instead of investing it, so our dollars, they die at war. Right. They don't come back, and they don't even come back with any prisoners, right? Yeah. So investing is just like war. If we send our investments out, we want to make sure that when we invest with our money, we get a greater return than what the risk is. Okay. Right? And in understanding these investments, we can understand the risk to reward ratio, how much risk is involved, what is the liquidity, can I sell this? And the investment's only worth what someone's willing to buy it from you for, the bid price. So I start with just telling people don't invest in it if you don't understand it. Gold, silver, real estate, these physical assets, land, people can understand these things. They're tangible. They're tangible. I can touch them. Exactly. Right. It's funny, and I'll share a story with you. My family, we're not the average family because we do things that are, we play tennis, I ski, I have worked with kids all my life. But last holiday season, I bought a game called Cash Flow, which is yes, Robert Kawasaki's game. My gosh, that's a very good game. So we are my nephews. The youngest one at the time, he was 18, and then the other one's in college. He was finishing up his undergrad at Dayton University of Dayton. So we played that game over the Christmas holidays, actually Thanksgiving and Christmas. So my youngest nephew, now my sister is a real estate broker, and I do what I do, but he kind of is in his little world. He plays video games all the time. So we're sitting at the table, and all of us are saying, "Okay, we're going to play." And I gave him the basis of what the purpose of the game was, and that it was to get out of the rat race and get into the cash flow of life, right? Right. So we're playing, and it has these little cards like regular life doodads. It's kind of, I call it Monopoly
and the Game of Life
Game of
on
Life combined.
steroids.
Yeah,
But it's on steroids, right? Because
yeah.
it gets you into the investment mode. So Travis is playing, and he goes, and these little cards kept coming up saying, you can sell your fourplexes, duplexes, and he goes, what are those plexus things? So we go in to explain what these plexes are, and it was saying if you had a duplex or you had a eightplex or sixplex, you could sell them at $135,000 per unit.
Per unit, yes.
And he's like, so after we explained, he went,
he's like, what?
Okay. So he went to work. So today, and we play this every holiday. Yeah. So today he is the house champion. Oh, wow. Because he ended the first time we played the game, he ended the game and his salary was $1.3 million. Because once he figured out,
it was over.
It was done. Yeah. So I was the banker. So it's kind of like Monopoly, right? So I was the banker. So for him to feel that he was doing something, he would take as he was getting his little bit of money. He's like, if he had $1,000, give me $5,000 bill. Correct. Then the $5,000 to a $10,000, so that he could feel the weight of the money. So we spent most of our time changing his income, his currency. But at the end of the day, the first game. So now he's still the reign. He is still the reigning champ because he finished the second time we played, which was last Christmas, and at $1.8 million. And it was like 6 of us at the table.
Well, see, the key is just like the game. It's the game of life. Even the game of life and then Monopoly. These are games that I have. Pretty much the students that I work with, work and play with, I recommend that they get these games. And in the games, they teach you the importance of just cash flow.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Understanding money, right? Understanding money. The process.
Right. But now here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize that they may think they understand money, but they truly don't understand money. What we have a confusion or a misconception of is currency and money being the same thing when they're not.
Right, exactly.
Currency is a unit of account.
Right.
Money is a store of value. So ever since 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, we've seen the governments get away with excessive printing of money. Right. They call it quantitative easing, but they really should just say printing more money or robbing from the people.
Because it's not based on anything, right? Because it used to be balanced off of gold, right?
And it was backed by gold.
Backed by gold.
So ever since 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard. And it was, if you go back to the Bretton Woods, when we hopped on the gold standard, basically what happened was in the 50s, we made an agreement with the OPEC nation, and it pegged oil to the dollar. From there, what the world didn't know was that the demand for the dollar was basically going to be forced on them, because in order to buy oil in the open market, you had to buy it in dollars. Right. So in the 60s, the United States government, they basically went on a rampant spree of printing money to fund the Vietnam War. And the nations that were holding treasuries using U.S. dollars for trade are noticing their dollars, the purchasing power was going down. So they're like, hey, we want to audit the vote. But we've never let anybody audit the vote. Right. So they repatriated their gold. Okay. That's why Nixon took us off the gold standard, because there would have been no gold left. Now, every nation is using what we call fiat currency. These are notes. They're promissory notes. Okay. The problem is that all these countries are bankrupt. They don't have anything left. They're all running with more expenses, deficit spending than they have.
So we just continue to create, but we don't have anything that if we were to crash, there's nothing.
There's nothing to back it,
to back it up.
So when I was in Indonesia, and when I did my lecture in Indonesia a couple of weeks ago, I pulled out the Chinese yuan, and on this dollar, it talked about you can redeem a $50 bill for another $50 bill. Well, if you're going to give me a piece of paper for a piece of paper, it's nothing.
It's nothing. It means it values.
Right.
And actually, that's what cash flow does. It teaches you that, because I also use it. I teach a bookkeeping and accounting class to individuals that are recipients of the social services. Yeah. And so the last class, that's what I do. We use the online cash flow game. Yeah, that's good. And now these are young people that have been on the system, don't understand not a thing about investments, buying stock, and so in that is allowing you to buy stock, and so one of the young ladies, when I used it this last go round, she was saying, well, how do I do this? I said, well, first of all, if they give you an opportunity to buy stock at $1, you now can probably buy about $1,000 worth of that. Then we want to see it grow. Right. So we want the next card to come up and tell us that you can sell it for $20. Now multiply that. And she's like, oh my God.
Right.
And
but
so I said,
a lot of them, they don't know where to go to buy the stock, what to do. Right.
Exactly.
And this is what I have my lecture series. I do Words to Worth to Wealth series. And in there, I talk about starting where you are. The younger you are, the easier it is to save.
Yes.
Because, compound interest, the ninth wonder of the world, it makes it easy for the money to build and accumulate. But the problem is right now, we're experiencing counterparty risk. What is counterparty risk? Counterparty risk is when I take an asset and I give it to somebody else and they give me a piece of paper.
Right.
Right. Now I have to trust that person and their financial acumen,
right,
and also their morals and their ethics.
Exactly.
Now, if we remember the phrase "too big to fail," there's no such thing as too big to fail anymore.
Not now.
Right. So the only thing that you can do to be secure is understand possession is 9/10 of the law.
Okay.
That means if I'm holding my assets, I don't have to worry about them being freezed, levied, fined, or just taken.
Right.
Right.
So you're not leveraged out with somebody backing it, and you're at their mercy.
Correct.
Now you're at your own mercy, and you're the one.
Right.
You're the puppet of your show.
If you remember Madoff Securities, MF Global, Enron, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, these companies went bust, and it was based on their investments, not yours.
Right, exactly.
If you had an investment account with them, you got pennies on the dollar.
Exactly. And that's what and I think that is how we control our destiny over the next 4 years, because President-elect Trump have brought in all of these people that were especially the guy over at Goldman Sachs. He was the reason
all of the Goldman Sachs, they go from the president's cabinet back to Goldman Sachs. So we talk about recycling black dollars. The truth is we need a black dollar exodus.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay.
Withdraw black dollars.
So a bank of our own?
No, we need to understand the change of times in moving to a cryptocurrency, right?
Okay.
Electronic currency like the blockchain technology, Bitcoin,
Ethereum,
okay, right? Now, these nations like Brazil, India, Russia, China, South Africa, they're all changing the mandates. They're changing legislation, and they're moving technology to using blockchain technology and currency. They also have the dinar dirham, which is basically it uses the technology that Bitcoin and Ethereum uses, but it's going to be pegged to gold. That means it'll be following the price of gold. Now, what's interesting is that the Chicago the Mercantile Exchange, where most futures and commodities are traded, they're supposed to be having the Bitcoin be introduced on, the Merc. Also, the NASDAQ is supposed to be tracking Bitcoin because a lot of investors are looking, at the Bitcoin as something that's interesting and intriguing. So you got to think about why Bitcoin. Well, it allows you to transfer money anywhere in the world, anytime, with no fees.
Okay.
It gives you the ability to have the same technology that banks have been using, the blockchain technology, to be able to send, receive money, and it's secure. It's crypto. It's anonymous and autonomous. You don't know who's sending it. You don't know who's receiving it. So we like to call it community banking. It puts the banking back in the hands of the people. Now, people don't realize this goes back to 1864 when the British Parliament created the Currency Act. They forbidded us from making our own currency.
Okay.
So now it's a completely different paradigm where the banking cartel is about to lose their power.
Okay. So how do we're going to take a little moment. For those of you that are interested in this conversation and would like to get more information on Bitcoins and currency and how we operate in the new paradigm, you can call us at 323-293-3375. So let me ask this, Reginald, because Bitcoin is probably about as foreign as financial literacy in our community.
I will say this. I don't want the viewers or listeners to just run and go grab Bitcoin because there is some risk involved with it.
Right.
It does fluctuate. Right?
Okay.
So what I like to use Bitcoin for is for my transactions. If I can be paid in Bitcoin or pay in Bitcoin, that's fine.
So how do you do that? I mean, is there a site or where do you get more information on Bitcoin?
It's as easy as downloading an app on your phone. They have, Bitcoin wallets. The best one is blockchain. Bitcoin wallet, you download it just like you download an app. They give you a secure log, or like an encryption number, and you send that to someone. They basically can pay you in Bitcoin. You can convert it to whatever currency you want. So you have to understand that right now, currency, we've had reserve currencies that usually have a 100-year lifespan.
Right.
We've had the dollar as a reserve currency since 1920. Before that, it was the Great Britain pound. Before that, the Swiss franc.
Okay.
No currency stays a reserve currency forever. If you understand technology is moving to a point where, remember, we were walking, and then we have carriages and now cars. There was a point where it was foreign for somebody to have a cell phone. Now we have cell phones everywhere, and everyone has internet everywhere.
Okay.
So when you understand how technology advances, the civilization, the way we live, you understand that the banking, it can't stay the way it was, right? It's no longer feasible to use paper when we have the ability for money to be sent back and forth electronically.
Exactly. In fact, I was at the Federal Reserve downtown, and we took the kids there.
Yeah.
We do a business camp.
Be careful. A lot of crooks in the Fed.
But one of the things they had said years ago, they actually processed so many checks, and now they process no checks because everybody's using electronic currency. And at some point, there will be no coins, and there will be no paper currency at all.
It's funny because people talk about one world currency. There's going to be it's been a one world currency. Visa's been around for a long time.
Okay.
And if you flip Visa the other way around, it spells Asia with an inverted V. We won't get too deep into esoteric information, but let's just say that Asia is supposed to be the next shift in terms of the Chinese renminbi being the next reserve currency. They actually got reserve currency status in September. Now, what people don't realize is since 2005, the Chinese were using the dollar to be paid in, and their currency was pegged to the U.S. dollar, which meant that the demand was up. Right,
exactly.
They're no longer using U.S. dollars for trade. And they made an agreement with Russia in the end of 2014, was about just under $1 trillion, about $800 billion. It was an agreement to sell oil in renminbi. Now, let me tell you why this is significant. Not only did China make an agreement with Russia, but they've made an agreement with almost half of the OPEC nation to sell oil in renminbi. What does that leave the United States? We are now left out of trade.
Right, because we're still functioning.
Right.
So how do we, okay. So it's like going from cars with gas, using gas, to carless, to driverless cars, and to electric.
Think about it. The factories, Crystal, the factories are all gone. The corporations are all gone. So everything is imported.
Yes.
So right now, the exchange rate for the U.S. dollar to the Chinese renminbi is $6.50. So this means for every $1 US, when you exchange it to a renminbi, you get $6.50. What people don't realize is that ever since September, the Chinese are no longer manipulating their currency to be able to balance the exchange rate. They're just going to let it go. As the dollar loses its value and the yuan goes higher, everything that we know is going to be that much more expensive. So what the Fed is doing, what a lot of these banks are doing, is they're printing money to pretty much buy treasuries to keep the dollar up.
Actually, I saw yesterday they were printing dollars.
Yeah. So it's really bad, but they're not talking about a lot of these countries degenerescing from the dollar. If you go to Zambia, in Zambia, you will go to jail for using U.S. dollars.
Really?
Yes. If you walk into any bank in the United States of America today and try to put cash in someone else's bank account, they will tell you to go right next door to the grocery store and get a money order or a cashier's check. They don't want the dollars anymore.
Because it's not stable.
Right. It's because it's fiat. They know that it's worth nothing. It's all just numbers in a system. So how do we see ourselves come out of this? Well, we trade amongst each other, and we use a currency that they don't have a monopoly over. The game Monopoly is fabulous. I like that game because it's a perfect example of the paradigm we're in. We hop on that board, and they haven't even given us the equal start that they gave the rest of the population.
Yeah, right.
We weren't even able to buy homes until the 60s when they created the equal housing and all that. So they had a head start. After we come in and buy houses,